The summer of 5 years ago was rough for me. I was 45, trying my best to keep my father's farm alive. The debts were piling up, and every day felt harder than the last. It was just me and the land, and I was losing ground. One evening, I stepped into the old barn to patch up a fallen wall. I was in my routine, nothing out of the ordinary. That's when I saw him. A stranger stood by the barn door chewing on something. I didn't know who he was or how he found me. He offered help with my financial problems. I thought it was a joke. I didn't need any help, I thought. I was stubborn and thought I could handle it alone. As the weeks went by, strange things began to happen. My crops wilted overnight. Healthy plants turned brown, and I felt a cold weight press down on my chest. I shook it off at first. Just stress, I told myself. But then, I noticed shadows moving along the tree line. They danced back and forth, teasing me from the corners of my vision. Those shadows scared me, but I kept working. I realized my neighbors didn't seem to be on my side anymore. They watched me, whispering, their eyes heavy with doubt. I could feel it, sneaking around me like a fog. It was like I was losing a fight against the land I loved. One day, while standing in my field, I saw dust scatter around my feet. I blinked, and just out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a shadow darting between the trees. My heart raced. I'd worked too hard to let this happen. Was this connected to that man? His offer echoed in my mind, worming its way into my thoughts. If only I put aside my pride and accepted, would things be different? I went into town for supplies one afternoon. That was when the whispers escalated. Folks glanced my way, shaking their heads. I could feel their judgment. I tried to shake off the feeling that everything was closing in on me. The farm began to feel like a cage instead of a home. Then, one chilling evening, it all hit me. I stood in the field, watching my hopes crumble, when a cold wind swept through, carrying a whisper that sent shivers down my spine. I squinted into the dark woods and called out, "Is anyone there?" Nothing answered back. Then I noticed him, the stranger, standing at the edge of the trees. His eyes were cold and empty. I stumbled back, panic clawing at my insides. He said something that made my blood run cold. "You should have taken my offer." The ground felt unsteady beneath me. All I saw were shadows, pushing closer. I had lost my land, but now I knew I was paying for my pride. The past was creeping back, dragging me into a darkness I couldn't escape. I felt powerless, trapped by my own decision, and the man who seemed to emerge from my worst fears. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of dread. I had hardly slept, troubled by the stranger's words. Breakfast fell flat. I moved through the motions, but my mind kept racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, and it almost made me jumpy in my own home. I decided to head to the barn. I needed to face what was left of my life. As I stepped inside, the smell of hay and old wood hit me. I spotted a broken tool in the corner, a sign that I had been neglecting everything, trying to ignore the unraveling world outside. I grabbed my hammer and headed to the wall that needed repair. That's when I noticed it. A symbol carved into the wood, just beneath the hay. It was crude, almost like a warning. I didn't recognize it, but the moment I traced it with my finger, a chill raced down my spine. Anger blended with fear. What had happened to my family's legacy? I stepped back, every nerve on high alert. The memory of that stranger emerged unbidden, the way he leaned against the barn door, the knowing smile. I forced myself to breathe. I couldn't let him win. I pushed the thought of him aside and focused on the task at hand. Hours passed, and I struggled with guilt more than labor. Just as I was about to finish, I heard a noise, crunching beneath my feet. Something thick and wet pooled beneath me. I paused and looked down. The ground was softer than it should be, darker. With a feeling of dread coiling in my stomach, I knelt down. My heart raced as I brushed away the sickly black soil. What I discovered made my stomach turn. A rat, not just dead, but corrupted, its body misshapen. I jerked back, my mind swirling with panic. Was this more than just bad luck? Suddenly, a voice broke through my shock. It was my neighbor, Martha. She stood at the barn door, a look of concern etched on her face. "We need to talk," she said, her tone low. I shrugged, but inside curiosity flared. Martha had always been kind, but lately she seemed distant, like everyone else. I stepped out to meet her. "What is it?" She glanced around, stepping into the shadows, as if afraid someone might overhear. "I saw you last night in the field. You shouldn't be out there alone. You need to leave this place." Her words hit hard. "What are you talking about?" "It's not safe, I swear. The man you saw, he's not who you think he is. We've kept quiet, but things are happening out there and you're caught in the middle." The urgency in her voice made me uneasy. I wanted to dismiss her worries, but deep down, I felt the weight of every word. Shadows danced around me, sharp and threatening. Before I could respond, the ground rumbled beneath us, and Martha's eyes widened with fear. "It's him," she gasped. I felt something shift, and suddenly the air turned heavy. I looked into the trees, feeling the presence of darkness closing around us. My heart raced. I didn't know what to do. Everything I held dear was at stake. Then everything went dark. I woke up on the barn floor, disoriented. My head throbbed and my vision blurred as I pushed myself up. The shadowy corners of the barn seemed to shift as I squinted against the dim light. Martha was gone, and panic surged through me. Where had she gone? I forced myself to stand, my legs shaky beneath me. I took a cautious step forward, then another. Something felt wrong. I could hardly breathe. It was as if the weight of the world pressed down on my chest. I glanced around, desperate for any signs of life, but only the quiet creaking of the barn answered me. Then I noticed a light flickering outside. I hurried to the door, slipping out into the morning air. The field stretched before me, illuminated by an eerie glow. I felt a pull toward it, as if it was calling me. When I reached the edge of the woods, I stopped. The trees were still, and an unnatural hush blanketed everything. But there, in the distance, was the figure of a man. He stood with his back to me, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the glowing light. My gut twisted with recognition. It was the stranger. I hesitated, fear clawing at my insides. What was he doing here? I was about to turn back when he suddenly spun around, a grin splitting his face. "Looking for something?" That smile sent chills down my spine. "What do you want?" I managed to ask, though my voice was shaky. "Just a few words with you," he replied, stepping closer. "You've stirred quite the curiosity. The folks around here, they have stories. You're part of that story now." I clenched my fists. "I'm not interested in your tales." "Oh, but you should be." He gestured toward the woods. "There are secrets hidden here. Secrets that could turn your life around, if only you dared to listen." A flicker of doubt crossed my mind. What did he mean? The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. "Your neighbor, Martha," he continued, his voice smooth. "She's not the only one trying to keep you from the truth. There are things you don't understand about this land, about your family's past." I took a step back, my heart pounding. "Leave my family out of this." He tilted his head, amusement glinting in his eyes. "Oh, but you can't. You're tied to it, to this place and its history. You can't pretend it isn't happening." I felt the ground shift beneath me again, the sense of something dark hovering close by. "What do you know?" I challenged, struggling to hold my ground. He took another step forward. "I know you're scared. That's why you'll never leave. You want answers? You're going to have to dig deeper, to confront what lurks beneath." With each word, A sense of urgency washed over me. I didn't want to uncover anything more, but I also couldn't turn my back. "What do you want from me?" He leaned in closer, his gaze locking onto mine. "Just your willingness to see. If you don't confront it, it will consume you." Before I could respond, the ground trembled, and in an instant the light faded. Dread washed over me as the woods grew silent. He was still standing there, but the fear crawling through me told me it wouldn't be long before things escalated further. Then, as if in response to my thoughts, a loud crash came from behind me, strong enough to shake the trees. Someone was in the barn. I whipped around, heart racing. The sound had been unmistakable, a heavy thump followed by what felt like the weight of something breaking. I took a deep breath and started back toward the barn, my mind racing with possibilities. Was it Martha? Was she hurt? As I stepped into the shadows, the barn loomed ahead, its weathered walls groaning under an unseen pressure. I hesitated at the door. What if it wasn't her? What if danger lay within? But fear propelled me forward. I pushed through the door and scanned the space. The sunlight filtered through the cracks, illuminating the dust that hung in the air, but the interior felt colder than I remembered. "Hello?" I called out, my voice wavering. There was no response. The barn seemed larger inside, the shadows stretching in peculiar ways. I moved cautiously, inching deeper into the building. My gaze swept across scattered tools and hay bales, and then I noticed something unusual. A trapdoor near the far wall, barely visible under an old tarp. Suddenly, another thud echoed from beneath it, sharper this time, accompanied by a low moan. I stopped in my tracks, every instinct screaming at me to run, yet a compulsion pulled me closer. Against my better judgment, I approached the trapdoor and tugged at the tarp, revealing a rusty handle. "Is anyone down there?" I called again, more desperate this time. The only answer was another muffled sound, this one sounding eerily like a cry. I gripped the handle and pulled. The door creaked open, revealing a steep staircase that spiraled down into darkness. Cold air rushed up, sending a shiver through me. I peered into the void, weighing my options. My heart hammered against my ribs, but the thought of Martha kept me rooted. I took a step closer to the opening, my fear battling with an urge to find out the truth. "Martha!" I shouted. Silence. Then, a faint whisper floated up from the depths. "Help me." Without thinking, I grabbed an old lantern hanging by the door, igniting it with a quick flick of a match. The flame flickered to life, casting trembling shadows as I descended the stairs. Each step creaked beneath me, a hesitant protest against my intrusion. As I reached the bottom, the lantern light danced across the walls of a small cellar. My throat tightened at the sight. The room was filled with old, rotting crates and the musty scent of history long forgotten. And in the corner, bound to a chair, was Martha. "Thank God," I gasped, my relief mixed with dread as I rushed to her. But as I knelt before her, the reality of her situation hit me. She looked pale, her hands trembling. "Who did this to you?" "It wasn't me," she whispered, her eyes darting. "They're coming, the man. He wants you to find the truth, but it's a trap." Before I could respond, there was a loud bang above us, the vibrations echoing through the ground. Then the trapdoor slammed shut, leaving only the flickering light of my lantern. "What did you mean?" I pressed, panic clawing at my throat. But just as I was about to get my answer, a chilling laughter rang out, echoing through the dark. Someone else was down there with us. I jolted to my feet, the darkness closing in around us like a suffocating blanket. The laughter bounced off the walls, mocking us. I turned to Martha, her wide eyes pleading for reassurance. "Stay quiet," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I could feel my pulse quickening. Whoever was down here with us had no regard for fear. Their laughter suggested they relished the chaos. I leaned to check the ropes binding Martha's wrists, but they were tight and expertly knotted. "I'm going to get you out of here," I promised, but doubt crept into my mind. "Don't," she began. But then she fell silent, her attention drawn to a shadow shifting deeper in the corner. My gaze followed hers as I squinted into the dark. The lantern's flickering flame revealed only a vague outline. Someone was definitely there. "Hello," I said, my voice trembling despite my effort to sound firm. The laughter subsided, replaced by an eerie stillness. I edged closer to Martha, ready to shield her if needed. My instincts screamed that we needed to leave, but a part of me felt anchored to the spot. There was something about the darkness, the way it seemed alive, that kept me from turning away. The shadow moved again, stepping into the light. A man, disheveled and wild-eyed, appeared before us. His clothing was torn, and a dark smudge smeared across his forehead gave him a sinister look. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice raspy, almost a whisper. "Martha needs help," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "What do you want?" He grinned, revealing crooked teeth. "You're chasing shadows, kid. You'll find what you're looking for, but it comes with a price." "What do you mean?" I demanded. The man stepped closer, almost in a trance. "The truth is buried deep, beneath lies and deceit. But you can't bury the past without paying for it. Are you willing to pay?" A chill ran down my spine. I could sense the danger crawling through the air. "Just let her go," I shouted, desperation pouring from me. I wasn't ready to lose her, not like this. Then he leaned in, and for a moment his expression softened, revealing a hint of sympathy. "The only way out is to understand why she's down here, why I'm down here. No one is innocent," he said, taking another step closer to me. I glanced at Martha, whose eyes reflected sheer terror. "He's not going to help us. We need to get out." Suddenly the trapdoor above us rattled, and I felt the ground shake. The man's eyes widened in alarm. "They're coming!" His words sent a fresh wave of fear surging through me. I turned back toward the stairs. That's when I saw it, a glint of metal gleaming from the dark corner behind me. The man froze as if the sight had paralyzed him. "Martha, we need to go, now." I grabbed her hands, but the air felt thick, as if pushing against me. Then everything went dark. The lantern flickered, and the flame sputtered out, leaving us engulfed in shadow. A whisper danced in the air. "What truth will you uncover if you don't escape?" The laughter returned, now mingling with a new sound. Footsteps approaching from above. I fumbled in the darkness, trying to hold on to Martha. I could feel her fear radiating between us, a current that made my skin crawl. My heart raced as I listened, straining to distinguish the footsteps. They were heavy and deliberate, like the march of doom. "Do you hear them?" Martha whispered, her voice trembling. "Who are they?" "I don't know," I replied, struggling to keep the panic at bay. "But we need to find a way out." I reached out, searching for anything that could offer a clue, a rope, a crack in the wall, anything. The darkness was suffocating, and I felt disoriented. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. A pipe? It felt familiar, but I couldn't place it. "Get ready," I said, taking a deep breath. I wrapped my hand around the metal object, hoping it could serve as a weapon or a tool to cut Martha free. The footsteps grew louder, echoing down the stairs. "Please," she whimpered. "I don't want to be here anymore." I wanted to reassure her, but I couldn't find the words. My thoughts raced as I tried to form a plan. I could hear the man's frantic breathing beside me, as if he were caught in a nightmare of his own making. "Why are you still here?" I hissed at him. "Don't you want to escape?" The man shook his head slowly. "I've already made my choice. If you lead her back, you'll both be trapped. You don't understand the cost." "Cost?" I snapped. "What cost? Just let us out." His eyes widened, reflecting a mix of madness and clarity. "You think you can escape without confronting the truth? They're coming for the answers, kid. They'll take you too. Just as I processed this, the footsteps reached the top of the stairs, shadows loomed over the trapdoor, and my breath caught in my throat. I pressed myself against the wall, pulling Martha closer. "Whatever you do, don't make a sound," I whispered. The trapdoor creaked open, and a blinding light spilled down, cutting through the darkness. I squinted, trying to make out the figures above. Two shapes leaned over, a man and a woman. The woman had a faint scar running down the side of her face. "Down there, I can hear them," the man shouted, his voice raw with urgency. The laughter became a chorus surrounding us once more. Someone was playing a game, and it was clear we were the pawns. "Now," I hissed at Martha. The sound of feet echoed as I yanked her toward the side of the cellar, away from the light. "Where are we going?" she gasped, her eyes wide. "Anywhere but here." I didn't know how long we could evade whatever was above us, but I felt that sense of urgency. The walls were closing in. As we slid into the shadows, I felt the metal object drop from my hand. It clattered to the floor, and the noise sliced through the laughter above. I froze, waiting for the fury to descend upon us. "Turn back," the woman called, her voice sharp, but we were already moving, deeper into the darkness where the footsteps could no longer follow. Just when I thought we were safe, I spotted something ahead, an outline of a door, half hidden among the debris of past lives. My heart raced. Was it a way out, or was it another trap? "Martha, we have to take the chance," I whispered. We dove toward the door, but just as I reached for the handle, I heard a harsh voice whisper, "You won't find what you're looking for there." I turned, scanning the shadows, but all I saw was darkness closing in. I hesitated, my heart pounding. I couldn't shake the feeling that the voice was familiar, like a long-forgotten echo that sent chills down my spine. We had to keep moving. I could sense the space around us tightening. "Martha, let's hurry," I urged, grabbing her hand and pushing forward. I pushed the door open, praying it wasn't the end. It creaked ominously, swinging slowly to reveal a narrow passage. The air felt different here, stale yet charged, as if something waited in the shadows. Martha squeezed my hand, and I could feel her tension. We entered the corridor, and the door snapped shut behind us, plunging us into half-light. "I don't like this," she murmured, her voice trembling. I wanted to comfort her, but I had my own fears. We stepped cautiously, our footsteps echoing off the damp walls. I strained my ears, trying to drown out the laughter. It was a haunting reminder of what lurked just out of reach. The corridor twisted ahead, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all a trap. "Do you think they'll find us?" she asked. "I don't know," I replied, biting back my own dread. "But we can't stop now. We have to keep moving." As we pressed further, the light flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. Just then, I caught sight of something lying on the floor, a small object glinting in the dimness. I bent down to examine it, my heart racing at the thought that maybe this was a clue, something that would lead us out. It was a key, a rusted metal key, heavy in my palm. "Where do you think it goes?" Martha asked, cautiously eyeing it. "Maybe it opens a door," I suggested, holding it tightly. I scanned the corridor, searching for any sign of a lock. Suddenly, I heard a crash behind us. Our instincts kicked in, and we darted forward, adrenaline fueling our escape. We rounded a corner, and my gut twisted. There was another door at the end of the hall, faintly glowing, a stark contrast to the dark space around us. "Martha, that could be it!" I shouted, anxiety coursing through me. We bolted toward the door, but just as I was about to reach for the handle, I froze. A shadow flickered across the doorway, an unmistakable figure outlined against the light. It was the scarred woman from before. "Going somewhere?" she taunted, her voice dripping with mockery. A rush of panic hit me. I pulled Martha back, pressing against the wall in a futile attempt to disappear. But there was nowhere to go. "Leave us alone," I yelled, fighting against the rising tide of fear. The woman chuckled, stepping closer, her eyes glinting with menace. "You think you can escape this? You're just a player in my game, and the rules? Well, they're mine to decide." Then, to my horror, I saw movement behind her. More figures emerged from the darkness, their intentions unreadable. In that moment, I realized the truth. The game had changed, and I had no idea what awaited us next. "Run!" I shouted to Martha, but as we turned, I caught a glimpse of the twisted faces closing in. The laughter grew louder, drowning out my thoughts, and everything faded into chaos. I gripped the key tighter, my mind racing with one question. Would we make it out, or were we destined to become part of their dark game forever? As we turned to run, I could barely breathe. The sound of footsteps behind us thundered in my ears, faster and more furious than mine. Panic surged through me. I needed to reach that glowing door. "Keep up!" I yelled to Martha, flinging myself forward. She rushed beside me, her face pale with fear. I glanced back and my heart plummeted. The scarred woman led the crowd, her eyes gleaming with a cruel delight. The others followed like hounds on a hunt. The passage narrowed, sharp edges digging into my shoulders as we barreled forward. I had no plan, just pure instinct driving me. I fixed my eyes on the door, if only I could reach it. "Almost there!" I shouted, squeezing past a low protrusion in the wall. My hand brushed something sticky, and I shuddered. Whatever it was, I didn't want to think about it. We dashed around a corner, and to my horror, the corridor split into two paths. The laughter behind us echoed, reverberating off the walls, growing closer. I skidded to a halt, panting. "Which way?" I gasped, panic settling in. Martha gripped my arm, her face a mix of fear and determination. "Right," she shouted, and before I could question her, we turned. We plunged into the darkness. The light behind us flickered, drawing farther away. "Where are we going?" I asked, breathless. "It has to lead somewhere," she replied, her voice strained. I glanced back, catching a glimpse of the scarred woman at the corridor's entrance, her expression frozen in an eerie smile. My stomach churned. The feeling of being hunted surged inside me. Then I saw it, a faint glimmer off to the side. I rushed toward it, my heart racing again. It wasn't a door, but a window, scuffed and cracked. I pressed my face against it. Outside, the moon hung low, illuminating a garden full of bizarre, twisted trees. "Let's go," Martha urged, but I hesitated. What if we could escape out there? "Look," I pointed, "that's our way out." But before I could grab the window frame, the thud of footsteps drew nearer. The laughter intensified, echoing through the corridor like a haunting melody. Panic flooded my senses. "Martha, we can't waste any more time," I yelled, wrestling with the window I barely fit through. "Help me." She nodded, her eyes wide with urgency. Together we shoved at the window. It creaked and rattled, but finally popped open, releasing a gust of musty air. I scrambled through, pulling Martha in after me. We landed in a heap on the ground, grass scratching my arms. But we didn't have a moment to breathe. Above us, the window slammed shut, and I heard the woman's voice again, clear and taunting. "You can't hide forever," she called, dark mirth lacing her words. We bolted upright, scanning our surroundings. The garden was surreal, vines curling around stones, pale flowers glowing eerily in the moonlight. "Martha, we need to find a way out of here," I urged, glancing back toward the house we'd just escaped. "This can't be real." Then I saw it, a path winding deeper into the garden. My gut twisted, a new sense of urgency driving my next move. I checked behind us again and saw no sign of our pursuers. "Go," I urged, leading the way down the path. As we stepped cautiously, I couldn't shake the feeling that every step we took bound us deeper into another layer of the game. What did the scarred woman want, and why was this garden filled with dread? That was when I heard it, the soft, twisted laughter ringing through the trees, and in that moment of sheer terror, I realized we weren't free yet. The game was still very much alive. The path was overgrown, twisting like a serpent through the strange garden. Shadows danced beneath the moonlight, playing tricks on my mind. I moved quickly, glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see the scarred woman emerging from the darkness. "Martha," I whispered. "Do you think she's following us?" "I don't know," she replied, breath hitching between words. "But we can't stop. We have to keep moving." Just ahead, the path widened into a small clearing. An ancient stone fountain stood at its center, water trickling from the mouth of a grotesque creature carved into the stone. The air felt heavier here, and I could almost hear whispers rising from the fountain. "Let's just keep going," I urged, clinching Martha's hand as I pulled her forward. I couldn't shake the feeling that the fountain was watching us. We skirted around it, but the moment I turned my back, the sound of water rushing grew louder, as if the fountain was calling out. A part of me wanted to look back, to stare into its depths and discover why it unnerved me. But I didn't. I pressed on, leading Martha through the uneven ground. That's when I stumbled. My foot caught on something hidden beneath the grass. I fell forward, my hands sinking into the damp earth. Anger flared. How could I trip now after all we'd been through? But as I got back to my feet, I noticed something glinting in the moonlight. I crouched down. It was a small box, ornately carved and half buried in the soil. My heart surged with curiosity. "Martha, look," I exclaimed, brushing off the dirt. "What do you think this is?" As I opened the lid, a soft light emitted from within, illuminating our faces. Inside lay a small, twisted key, carved from what looked like bone. It felt cold and oddly alive in my hands. "What is it?" Martha asked, inching closer, eyes wide with a mix of wonder and fear. "I don't know," I admitted, my mind racing. "But maybe it's important. This could lead us to freedom." Just as I placed the key in my pocket, a low growl echoed through the garden. I froze, sensing that something in the dark was awakening. Fear coursed through my veins, and I turned to Martha. "What do we do?" she whispered, eyes darting around. "Run!" I shouted, adrenaline surging once more. We sprinted past the fountain, my breath coming in quick gasps. The laughter returned, more sinister this time, growing louder as if it was mocking our every move. I could hear footsteps thrumming behind us again, the sound growing closer. The key felt heavy against my chest, but there was no time to think. Then, as we approached another bend in the garden path, a massive figure emerged from the shadows. My pulse quickened. It wasn't the woman, but something far worse. A hulking creature with glowing red eyes, teeth bared like a wild animal. "Oh no!" Martha cried, stumbling backward. There was nowhere to go. The garden had closed in around us, and I felt the weight of dread crushing down. But then, the key pulsed against my heart, a strange warmth radiating from it. "Maybe it's a way out," I shouted, lunging toward the creature, ready to confront it with whatever power the key held. "Don't!" Martha yelled, but I was already moving, the future uncertain and the stakes never higher. Suddenly, everything began to shift, as if the garden itself was alive and reshaping around us. Then the darkness surged, and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in soft grass, the weight of dread slipping away as the familiar scent of earth surrounded me. It took a moment to register where I was. I blinked against the bright sun, trying to shake off the remnants of the darkness that had engulfed me. Had I escaped? Slowly, I sat up. The garden stretched out around me, but something felt different. No twisted trees, no sinister laughter, just a patchwork of wildflowers swaying in a gentle breeze. The fountain had disappeared, and the air felt lighter, as if the weight of my fears had dissipated. But my heart pounded in my chest. I wasn't entirely free yet. "Martha," I called, voice hoarse. I glanced around, panic rising again. Had she made it out? Martha! There was no answer, just silence echoing through what seemed like an endless field. I forced myself to stand, legs shaky as I took in my surroundings. The sun hung high, casting long shadows that felt strangely comforting, yet unnerving at the same time. "Where are you?" I murmured, more to myself than in hope of being heard. I began to walk, starting toward the horizon. My heart sank with every step, knowing that I had to find Martha, yet uncertain if I was still trapped in a game of someone else's making. Would I find her, only to face more danger? As I walked, the memories flooded back. A kaleidoscope of fear and shadows, the stranger's mocking grin, the laughter that seemed to cling like a shadow. I stopped at a small hilltop and scanned the endless landscape. Just fields, stretching endlessly into the distance. I couldn't tell if I had passed through a portal or just woken from a nightmare. Then, barely perceptible, I heard something. A whisper carried on the wind that felt hauntingly familiar. The call of the garden, or the echoes of laughter. I shook my head, forcing myself to confront the truth. Martha was still in this somewhere. Maybe I hadn't completely escaped after all. I continued walking, drawn by the softness of the whisper, which seemed to beckon me farther into the unknown. As I approached a line of trees standing like guardians along the edge of the field, I felt a strange sensation pulse through me. The key that had once been hidden in my pocket now lay heavy against my heart. What truth had it unlocked? I hesitated, grappling with the urgency to find Martha and the question that loomed. Had I inadvertently released something darker when I touched it? Was I now entwined in this narrative of fear and confusion without any way back? I reached the tree line, where shadows played tricks on my mind. Pushing through the brush, I emerged into another clearing. Ahead, the very stranger that had haunted my thoughts stood with arms folded and a knowing gaze. "Welcome back," he said, a hint of amusement curling at the edges of his mouth. "Where's Martha?" I demanded, fear flaring anew. He merely tilted his head, glancing past me at the glimmer of light visible through the trees. "It seems she has uncovered truths of her own. But don't worry. This place holds many secrets, yet not all offer paths to freedom." I inhaled sharply, my mind racing with possibilities, confusion mixing with boiling anger. "What did you do to us?" "I didn't do anything. You opened the door," he replied, eyes darkly amused. "And everyone must confront the stories that bind them." "What do you mean?" But he was already fading back into the shadows, leaving me again with questions hanging like whispers on the breeze. I stood there, heart pounding, gazing into the depths of the woods. Somewhere within, Martha was searching for me, battling her own shadows, and I could only hope that the path we had each taken would somehow lead us back together. I took a step forward, determination igniting inside me. There was no turning back. I would find her, whatever the cost. Above me the trees swayed, and I felt once more that ominous pull of destiny. What awaited us was shrouded in mystery, but perhaps the truth was worth the journey, ambiguous and uncertain, just like the path I was on. I moved into the twilight, my resolve solidifying with every step. I still think about that summer sometimes, the haunting shadows that lingered in the corners of my mind. I don't know if it was real or just a product of my own fading sanity. But what I do know is that a part of me is forever marked by that place and what I found, or lost, along the way.